today's collectible spot, we are having a look at the ThreeZero Fallout 4 T-45 Power Armor. A big thank you to the folks over at ThreeZero who took the time to send me this early production sample. As it stands right now, I believe this figure is still on pre-order. I'll put the link down below to some outlets that you can pick this figure up for yourself. But again, a big thank you to the folks over at ThreeZero for taking the time and sending this my way. The immediate thing that probably catches your eye is just the sheer size of this figure. It's a little bit taller than a 6 scale figure, and we'll do a couple of size comparisons in a second. But certainly, not only is he going to be a little bit taller than other 6 scale figures, but he's also a lot bulkier as well. The majority of the armor really gives him just a much more inflated size rather than other 6 scale collectibles. The majority of the armor, as in the game itself, is all removable, so I'll show you guys that in a second. But you know what, before we actually start removing armor, let's have a look at the armor that's actually on him. Now, for his head, he is currently sporting the helmet itself. However, when they do eventually release him, he does actually come with also a human face underneath that is simply just swappable out by a ball socket underneath. I would feel probably that most collectors will likely keep the T-45 helmet on as opposed to putting on the human face, but there's no denying though a fantastic likeness and paint applied to the human face that you can swap out. The hair is done very well. There's a real layered effect that they've been added to the flesh of the face. A very neutral expression as well. They haven't given him a more exaggerated expression, but I think the hair is probably one of the best I've seen on a 6 scale figure treatment. And I'll pop the head off in a second. I'll show you guys how this swaps out in a second. But let's have a better look at the helmet. The sculpt on the helmet is quite nice indeed. Almost very parallel to like a stormtrooper design. Giving him mostly a silver deco. It's more like a silver metallic deco to the majority of this suit as it currently stands before I start taking components off. You can see a lot of the rust and brown that's been added to the, just washed over top of the trim area of the shoulder pad sections, and also carrying over into the helmet itself. Now there's a little light section right here, a couple of little breathing tubes that come out from the front mouth guard of the helmet itself. And this one also does light up. There's a little switch on the side here, and before we just press it, let me just flip around, and for that I'll just bring the camera back a little bit. I want to flip around to the back of the figure. The sample here didn't actually come with batteries, but luckily I did find some batteries that did fit that perfectly. It took 2 batteries, and the instructions I think indicated, I think I used an LR. I think I ended up using the L21 button cell batteries. Put those in place. You can just revisit the panel here. You have to kind of get your finger in there to pull the back panel off. But then once that's in place, 2 button cell batteries, you press the little button on the side, and the light on the front here lights up. Through that process as well, because the light also lights up, it also lights up the front goggle area of the head as well. It's not overly bright. It's, you know, just almost more of a soft white light, but it certainly conveys a very nice projection of light, at least coming out from the helmet itself. And just to turn it off, once again, you press the button on the side, and it switches it off. Looking at the rest of the suit, it definitely it's very bulky. It's almost more of a primitive looking design to it, almost mirroring that of the Mark I Iron Man suit. You can kind of see how the armor is going to eventually come off here. Where it really gets creative though, and pretty detailed from the folks over at ThreeZero, is when you start moving like arm components out of the way and you start seeing the inner workings of the suit, which will eventually become more apparent as we take the armor pieces off. It's really intricate inside here. And the back of the suit, you've got your air tank supply areas there that will, of course, be fueling oxygen into the wearer's respiratory system. The back also, I just rotate it just enough, there's this little cog dial here. And it's neat that when you rotate the dial, it pops this little cog out. as you can see right there. And it's painted in silver with a little bit of the yellow down below there as well. And then you can just select. Now there's a little couple of grooves there that you need to line it up, and then you can rotate the dial back in and it keeps that in place. Despite the suit's bulkiness, really, it still retains a fair bit of articulation. I love how everything is ratcheted as well. Ratcheted shoulders, ratcheted elbows, has a ball joint in the hand. Even, let's see if I can flip it around here. Even the hands are individually posable. So there's a ball joint hinge in the thumb section, but then there's an individual hinge in the two knuckles of the thumb. On the side of the hands, each of the individual hands are articulated. It looks like it's only articulated in, well, it is actually articulated in one knuckle and then the fingertip knuckle as well. And even the areas where the hands are articulated, they've kind of paneled it looking, you know, almost you can see where, like part of it would be the mechanical end of the suit, and then the part of it, the other end of it would be like the little flaps and areas where the fingers would come into play. Very, very posable hand. Still has articulation in the legs. It's a little stiffer, but still has that ratcheted joint, ratcheted knees, and then the feet themselves, which I also want to touch base on. The feet are also individually posed. They pivot, they hinge back and forth. Individual articulation in the feet as well as the back heel. By far though, I am probably most impressed by this paint job. Now I've already taken the armor all off and I put the armor back on prior to this review. You know, there's a lot more underneath, but really, I mean, fantastic paint by ThreeZero on the actual plates. Even like seeing around the little cog, or not really cog, but the hinged areas of the knee, is that additional brown rusted wash, and like all of the areas I don't think go unscathed by this rust paint treatment. There's not really a clean, untouched area on the entire suit. Everything has this red and brown rust wash to it. It's really impressive. Now granted, the T-45 model suit is maybe not as impressive as like the later X-01 suits, but you know what? Being that I guess most people kind of gravitate towards this suit as the primary, eventually, maybe as ThreeZero releases more of these suits, because theoretically all the armor plates are removable by magnets, there is a good possibility that you could theoretically mix and match armor components to get something that, you know, you can customize to your heart's content. As mentioned, all of these components, for example, like the shoulder plates here, are all attached only solely by magnets underneath. It also means adding armor components are extremely easy. Removing armor components, you don't have to worry about anything breaking because everything is sitting together by magnets. Things such as the legs, things such as the arms, they're basically sandwiched together and they snap in place, and that keeps, you're basically having either side over top of the existing armored frame. So those will take a little bit more care to take off, but things such as the shoulder pads, areas such as the front torso armor, again, you want to be very careful when you take this component off. Again, as you can see, this section is rubber, which I like that they're adding additional mediums to it as opposed to just being plastic. But this also removes by magnets. So like I was saying with the leg and the thigh areas and the arm areas, they're sandwiched together. As you can see, one side is slotted, and then the back side has the little notches here that will attach to the front halves. And we can go ahead and do the same thing on this leg as well. Just pop the back section off and remove, without it falling hopefully, remove the front armor piece. Do the same thing with the thighs. Thighs are a little bit more difficult because you want to also make sure that you're not accidentally pulling them around the thigh or the torso area. So you know, make sure you don't accidentally snap it or apply too much pressure against it. And that slides just around. Now, see this section here where it attaches to the side of the leg. See how it's slightly raised, so when you take it off, you kind of have to lift it a little bit further up and then pull the armor plate off. When you get to the area of the lower torso, it's actually attached by hinges. So when you pull it off, see the little tab areas on either side. You want to kind of lift it and then pop it off like that. Now we can go ahead and just finish up the leg section, pulling that off, and then we can start getting to the arms. Take that piece off as well. To get the arm plates off, what you'll need to do first is remove the hand sockets altogether. Take the hands completely out of the ball joint sockets. Once that's done, you can easily slide these off, and they actually don't sandwich themselves together like we've seen with the other armor. You just simply want to slide them right off. The final step before changing out the head is go around to the back and grab this whole back section here. You want to make sure that all the tubes are not being caught on anything, because when you pull that out, you don't want these tubes accidentally ripping. Put that to the side. And the only thing left we need to do now is change out the head. Very carefully, go ahead and grab the head from the top here, and you want to pop it off the ball socket. I say very carefully because there's all these little dials, little cogs here. You don't actually want to push down on them and break them off by accident. Then we can go ahead and add the human head, and that pops just in place. Making sure, of course, when you pop the head into place, you're making sure that the neck cavity sits inside the cuff of the jacket collar there. For the final touches, spin the figure around, and ThreeZero gives you additional tanks. And those, you want to see the lining up of the magnets there, those will attach just at the top there. You get two of them, like that. And then you have a secondary cog wheel that is magnetized. It'll just attach to the back like that. Actually, Spot did put the tanks on the wrong way. You want to take them and spin them the opposite way, because, get the other one in place there, because these tubes will want to connect themselves to the sides of the armor. And these little side tabs are rubbery, so they're a little harder to tab into place. That makes a little bit more sense. So then there you have the primary skeletal frame of the suit that we've had a look at. Some interesting things to note, of course, above and beyond the fact that it just has a lot of detail going for it, a lot of paint, but little small things that I like about this is that you can see the suit, or what will be the pilot's clothing underneath the gapped areas of the skeletal frame. But what I really like is that down below, right above the actual suit feet, you can actually see the feet of the pilot underneath. You can see his shoes there and the pant legs that are going right up underneath the skeletal frame of the legs. An exceptional touch. I really appreciate I appreciate the level of detail that they would have gone as far as to put that in place. So it really is really a fantastic looking 6 scale figure. It's a little bit taller, of course, because factoring that the actual legs of the pilots will end right here, it's going to be a little bit taller in scale. Really a great looking sculpt on everything. Again, it has that aged look to it, so it doesn't look like it's a pristine looking skeletal frame either, as much as the armor itself. And just an example here, there's one of the thigh pieces. As much as the armor outer armor pieces, plates, as much as they were aged and rusted, I don't think the skeletal frame underneath has been, has remained untouched by that age. This looks like something that's been around for a very, very long time, maybe not working to the best of its ability, but it's something that they just have to make use of, in the field of battle here. Ultimately, I will probably not display it like this with the human face. I'll probably display it back with all the armor plates on. But I really got to give nods to ThreeZero for just the level of care and the level of just all the little intricate panels that they've put into this. Even like the back. You can see how the back of the shoes there are placed. Still presumably, like, it looks like it's a practical looking, you know, appliance. And even, actually, another thing I want to point out too is the hand. I don't know if you guys can see it, but right at the side of the arm here, where that area is opened, it's the human hand actually inside there. So of course this would be the mech hand, but inside here would be the hand of the pilot controlling it. Very nice. Posability-wise, it's pretty much what we saw when all the armor was on, although it's just not as restricted, perhaps, as before. The arms have a little bit more motion out. They can move forward and back. Full riveted elbow, ratcheted elbow, I should say. The articulation on the hands still are retained the same because we haven't changed or removed those hands. It doesn't appear that, well, it does have a ball joint, and though through the process of that you might find you knock the cog wheel off. It has a slight pivoting to the torso, but as you can see, as you rotate it, you don't want to add too much stress to these rubber tubes that are on the front here. This section right here is all a soft kind of rubber appliance that's underneath the frame. Full articulation in the leg, though again, slightly restricted. I will say a little bit of caution too, don't add a lot of stress moving the legs forward and back, because you don't want to start splitting or puncturing that rubber undersuit. It has full articulation in a ratcheted leg, and sometimes through the process of that, I've noticed that the leg gets a little on the stiff side, and you still have the full motion. I would say almost even a little more motion in the feet now that the bottom plates have been removed. Other accessories to come included with the T-45 are: you get the tried and true AER-9 laser rifle. And as aged as the armor was, the actual rifle itself also carries over that same aged look. Little small details such as caution are also applied to the more, well, I guess the barrel end of the rifle here. It doesn't look pristine, which is exactly what you would need for something like this. It would defeat the purpose really if the suit itself had an aged look to it and then the rifle looked pristine. And I can safely say, and hopefully demonstrate here in this video, that the rifle is just as aged as the armor itself. Getting, however, him to hold the rifle can be a little bit tricky. It's just really by sheer nature of the way that the handle has been sculpted that it doesn't give you a lot of clearance to get around the handle necessarily. You can kind of get the thumb around it slightly to hold it, but by no fault of ThreeZero, there's really not enough, there's not really enough there that the hands can get a grip around holding. As you can see, like, there's really nothing there's not nearly enough to hold it. Maybe if the handle had been a little bit longer, but then you're starting to kind of get away from the design of the rifle. The thumb again can kind of hold it, just not that well. For the final looks, I've gone ahead and added the AER-9 laser into his hand, which again still fits pretty good if you kind of move the hand out of the way. I've also gone ahead and turned the goggle and like a little searchlight on there. I really like the piece. I have some reservation towards the magnetic end of the armor. I don't have a problem with. I feel like some of the snapping and pulling apart of the sandwiched armor, more importantly like the legs and the bicep area of the armor, I feel like I'd be a little worried about pulling that off, putting it on too often, because there's just like a very narrow clip attaching the two. ThreeZero has indicated that upon the actual release of the figure, taking off armor and putting it on, especially those sandwiched halves, will be a little bit easier. I will not likely take armor off and put it back on. I'm really happy with this as a look to the character. It's just a spectacular looking piece. They really have outdone themselves here, especially on paint, the ability to remove the armor plates off, and also incorporating the human head too are also really nice touches. Spot also had promised that he was going to do a size comparison just to show you how tall the suit is here. So let's go ahead and bring in something, well, let's bring in something that we can properly gauge height with. And kind of a for a laugh here, I thought, you know, let's bring in another slightly mechanized suit here, that being the Hot Toys RoboCop figure. You can see how the T-45 armor is a lot taller, of course incorporating the idea that the human legs would really stop around here. I guess they would be of appropriate height, but because it's actually inside a suit, it is considerably taller than a standard 6 scale figure. Though the T-45 power armor lacks a bit of the mobility that perhaps later models like the T-51 power armor had, it's still a pretty impressive looking design for the suit. And I really think ThreeZero ultimately gave us a really faithful recreation of the suit, simply in a 6 scale treatment. I think West Tech would certainly be very impressed with what ThreeZero has delivered here in this collectible figure. Today's collectible spot, we were having a look at the ThreeZero Fallout 4 T-45 power armor. Stay tuned, guys. Spot's going to have more collectible spots heading your way. As always, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.